their town for the next 10 years. And a little over a year ago, the Norfolk, as wearing our planning hats, put together this plan of conservation and development that Glenn's going to talk about tonight. It was made effective in September of 2019, and so we're well into 2020 now. And so we could not have done it without the help of Glenn Schaller. Glenn has been helping the town of Norfolk Planning and Zoning with gathering input, establishing procedures, writing regulations, and interpreting state statutes and requirements for something like a decade. He's the president and project manager for Planometrics, Inc. He has a wealth of knowledge, great creativity, and a wonderful sense of humor. And he's honed that for over 40 years of experience. And he's made him one of our town's greatest resources. We really appreciate all the help he's given us and welcome him here tonight. And I couldn't be more honored than to introduce you to Glenn Schaller.
See, I always hate it when I get an ovation at the front. That's just too much pressure. My name is Glenn Schaller. I'm a planning consultant. When I hear the number of years that I've been doing this shared with the audience, I just can't believe it's been this long. But my background and experience is working basically with communities in Connecticut, helping them do two things: craft their long-term vision, which again I've had an opportunity to work in Norfolk on the prior plan, which was adopted I guess in 2009. And then this plan, and in the intervening period, I also helped the commission rewrite their zoning regulations and the subdivision regulations. And the whole goal of this is to get our vision for the future clear in our minds, and then get the tools in place to try to make that happen. So I feel somehow invested in Norfolk in a lot of different ways. And when I was asked to be here tonight and support the work of the hub and the community, I was delighted to be here. So I've got a ubiquitous, everybody has a PowerPoint, I got my own, but the whole purpose of this is to try to organize the information for me to be able to share it with you fairly quickly so that we can get into questions, dialogues, and everything else and really make this a great meeting and a great opportunity. So the subject tonight is about strengthening the village center and creating a village campus, and this is basically a component of the plan of conservation and development. As was indicated, this is adopted in 2019, and a plan of conservation and development is really a vision for the future of the community. It's an advisory document meant to identify things that we think are going to make our community a better place in the future, and to respond to the question about what type of community do we want to be, and then to identify strategies to help us get there. And so what I'd like to do is share some information about how the plan was prepared and then what's in the plan also. The statutory authority to adopt the plan rests with the Planning and Zoning Commission. They wanted to involve the community, so we did a lot in terms of surveying members of boards and commissions. We did a community survey. I don't know if you remember seeing this little red sign here, which was around town roughly Memorial Day of 2018. It had to have been. Listening sessions and community meetings, again, to try to get input overall. And as the plan came together, additional public meetings as part of that process. The actual plan, the way it's crafted, has sort of 6 parts to it. I'll explain what those 6 parts are just to give you the context of the plan. But then most of my remarks tonight are going to be about the 4th section, which is really about the village center and the campus overall. So the 6 parts of the plan, first of all, is just an introduction as to where Norfolk was as the plan was being created, talking about the changing demographics in our community. The average age of the population is getting older. We're all aging, if you will. And what that means for our community in the future. Based on the results of the survey, the number one thing that people in Norfolk cared about was maintaining the character of the community going forward. This is really, really important for people. And so that's what's reflected in the first section of the plan. The second section talks about key issues which are going to be addressed or promoted as part of the plan. Those include attracting young people so that, again, our aging population, we have regeneration within the community, attracting economic development, and then strengthening the town center. So we wanted to lead off with those key issues. The third section of the plan is about maintaining and enhancing assets. These are our physical assets, our natural resources, water courses, wetlands, steep slopes, floodplains, scenic views, all of the things that just are special to people about this community physically, but also the sense of community here. This is where I have to pause for a moment and say I've had an opportunity to work for more than half the towns in the state of Connecticut. But I have to tell you that one of the reasons I come back to Norfolk, and I'm happy to be here, is because of what makes you guys different than every other town in the state. You have this personality, the sense of community, the sense of purpose, where you pull together for something like this, that just kind of makes you special and different. So the plan talks about that, it promotes that, and encourages that. I just wanted you to know that I know you're special, and I just wanted to share that. The fourth section is about maintaining and strengthening the center. We'll talk about that. The fifth is kind of the catch-all in terms of other issues, in terms of residential development, community facilities, sustainability, and some other stuff. And the last part is about implementation, which is clearly the main reason we do planning at all. So let me talk about maintaining and strengthening the center. Again, as I just indicated, what Norfolk has is special. We have a fairly compact town center that has public water and sewer available to it. In years past, people would come to the center daily to buy groceries and participate with the neighbors, go to the post office, all these things that would go on to make this a vibrant part of the community. We've had some wonderful residents in Norfolk over the years who have donated to build the town hall, Infinity Hall, and its prior uses and activities of what happened there. All of these things really kind of make our community special. We've got great buildings, great places, great spaces. We've got great organizations too. We've got the town, we've got Infinity Hall, the library, the Bethel Speckle Estate across the street, the foundation. And so really part of our question in a sense for the future of the community overall too, is how do we keep that special? And the reason is because the world's changing faster than we ever thought it would or could. These online activities and uses, HBO and Netflix, mean that people stay home and stream TV shows and movies rather than getting together to go see them. Uber Eats, you don't have to go to a restaurant, you can have food delivered. Maybe a little harder in Norfolk. I'll volunteer, I'll drop off. I noticed over here, deliver hot meals, so we have our own. Amazon, Peapod, Kindle, all of these activities are actually kind of pulling away the fabric of our community and the things that keep us together. So really, I think part of the challenge, and it's recognized in the plan, is how can we keep this going forward, the types of things that make Norfolk special. The chapter in the plan has a goal statement. Give you a moment, I'll read it to you as well. Maintain and enhance an attractive, enticing, and vibrant village center, economically, socially, and physically, by connecting the multiple assets and resources which already exist into an overall campus of unique destinations and activities. We have good bones here, and what we need to do is to recognize that and continue to work on it and keep it together. Now, as part of the POC, I want to give special thanks to the foundation because they provided and sponsored the opportunity to conduct a more detailed evaluation of the town center. This charrette activity that we called it was conducted with Peter Flicker and people from Dodson and Flicker, his firm. We met here on multiple occasions to really talk about the town center. It involved many people in the community. Some of you who are in this room participating. So this section of the town plan covers a couple of things. First of all, there's maps in the plan. These 2-page spreads in the plan. The first of which identified some of the issues and opportunities that we have in the center today. There are some traffic issues in terms of traffic flow and sight lines and other issues. There are some parking limitations that don't exist at all times, but doesn't it just sort of seem to everybody that when you come into the center of town, you can not always find a parking space when and where you want it? And particularly when Infinity Hall and other activities are going on, it gets kind of crazy here. So, Yogi Berra had a famous quote. He says, nobody goes there anymore. It's too busy. It's too crowded. But we want to keep Norfolk busy and active. The third thing we were talking about was wayfinding needs. You guys have something which I call the curse of knowledge, which is you know where everything is and you know how to get around. But we invite hundreds and thousands of people into our community, hundreds each week, thousands each year, to come visit our community, but they don't know their way around. And so as a result, it creates a situation where Norfolk is a little bit of a black box to them. And so maybe we could be better hosts when we talk about that. Improving the pedestrian and bicycle systems in the community, and then addressing the isolation of the Battelle-Steckel estate. It's up on a hill, it's separated in back. Not a lot of people know that it's here when they come by for other things. So those are the issues in the plan, and what we talked about was some strategies that we think Norfolk could work on. And we talked these through with the Planning and Zoning Commission and with the Charette Group in terms of moving forward. And there were really 7 of them. Number 1 was enhancing the sense of place and vitality that's already here, improving vehicular access and parking, trying to find ways to connect to the Battelle-Steckel estate, completing pedestrian and bicycle networks so that we complete ways for people to get around, enhance gateways and wayfinding, maintain ecological networks, and then address the zoning. I have some slides on each one of these to give you a sense of what is in the plan overall. Under the first of which was enhanced sense of place and vitality, we broke down the recommendations in the plan into 2 major components, what we call key elements. These are things that over the course of the next 10 years, the town, the community should try to devote efforts to having these things happen or occur, or to support them. In addition, it's not presented here, but there's also a second tier called secondary elements, which are things that would be really nice to get to if we can find the opportunities to do so. So in terms of enhancing sense of place and vitality, recognizing that we are part of a campus. It's not just us on this side and Yale on the other side, and the town green and the churches, the library. We're actually all teammates as part of this thing that we call Norfolk Center. And if we start visualizing it and thinking about it as a campus, it provides opportunities for us to collaborate on things. And so that's really the number 1 thing is enhanced place and vitality. And the number 1 thing under that is this concept of a campus and being all on the same team and working together. Encouraging and supporting uses to create an enhanced sense of place and vitality. Continuing to conduct events like we are tonight and Norfolk Days and things like that. And also encouraging new buildings that would make the center an exciting and interesting place. All the strategies in the plan, not all, most of the strategies in this section of the plan have a map that goes along with them. And the map identifies key elements of the strategies so that people can look at them and ponder and think about the strategies that are in there and decide which ones to pick up and run with. We talked about sort of the boundary of a village campus, placemaking for public spaces in the community where people can gather, coordinated events and programming, historic art and nature trails for people to explore, and then making room for new uses in the center so that, again, it continues to be an active, growing, and vibrant place. Second element of this chapter was about improving vehicular access and parking. The number 1 for key element here was improving safety. The challenge for novices exiting from Station Place on Route 44 is daunting at times. And people just gun it and go and cross their fingers and hope. And it's a little scary. So the question that we were looking at is there a way to make this an inviting and welcoming place? We don't want it to feel like Hotel California where you come in and you can never leave. We want people to find their way through and out, but we also don't want people to think, you know what, I'm not comfortable there. We thought this was an important issue, and the plan suggests investigating whether it makes sense to make this section of the roadway one way and then route people out, and then they'll always have a safe intersection. And then the secondary elements here, we're looking at ways, if they possible, to add parking, enhance awareness of parking availability. There are some people who say we need more parking. There's other people who say, well, we have enough parking, we just need to let people know where it is. And actually right here, on the back of this board, there's a little map that shows the number of parking spaces that are available. There's quite a number around. Unfortunately, some of them are down on Shepherd Road. So if you're going to Infinity Hall, it looks like it's a big walk up the hill, and people generally don't want to do that. So the question is, parking is an issue for us to think about in the future. It's not a key element, but it is something that we might want to be considering in the future. And the plan suggests on the map some options in terms of where and how parking could be enhanced if the community decides that that's the direction that they would like to go. So, improving safety, opportunities for additional parking, improving the signage about where parking is. There is an opportunity to provide more parking up at the town hall, and possibly even more parking at the Village Green. The third part was connecting to the Patel-Steckel estate. The estate is an amazing facility to have in the heart of our community. The events and activities they run there in the summer, the kids who stay and teach and learn, it's an interesting opportunity for us to combine our forces and learn about ways to make our community better. So the key element here is working together, trying to find ways to support the activities of the state, the Yale Summer School, the Chamber Music Festival, and strengthen the working relationship. There were some concerns expressed by Yale as part of this process in terms of public access and possible liability for them. You know, if somebody was there and got hurt, they're invited or encouraged access, what their exposure would be. We spent some time talking and looking at liability concerns, and there is a provision in Connecticut law that does provide some protection for them, but they are evaluating their circumstances and situation, financially and otherwise, and they are expressed interest in continuing to work with us. So it is so close, but sometimes it seems so far, but the plan suggests we find ways to work with the Patel-Steckel to try to pull that together. There are some maps in the plan that suggest some ideas for parts of the estate that could be open for public access, other parts which are educational or residential for the students and the faculty that are a little bit more private. And what we should do is try to devise a way, if you will, to work effectively together. The next component in this section of the plan was about completing pedestrian and bicycle networks. We have good walkways in many areas, and some the brick is a little topsy-turvy, and there's some dips and some other things like that. We have parking up at the town hall. When my wife and I come here to shows at Infinity Hall, we park up there and walk down because we know it's there. All right, it's such a great walk. Other people don't. We're sort of amazed that there aren't that many people up there. But we could enhance that pedestrian walkway, lighting or something else to make it a little bit better. Pedestrian connections between the village center and existing trailheads. There's some trails, the rail to trail effort, and other things that are nearby. But again, we don't sort of really tell people how to get there from here. We could do a better job with that. And crosswalks. There's only really one, I think, painted crosswalk in front of the library. So if you wanted to go other places, you sort of have to stand at the curb and look both, they tell us that in grade school, look both ways, but it's a little scary. So we could find ways to enhance the pedestrian network and also the bicycle network. Norfolk has wonderful road and trail biking opportunities. And for activities, we could attract people to our community, eat at our restaurants, to participate here and have a wonderful recreational opportunity. So economic development doesn't have to be businesses and other things. It could be activities that could attract people, as we already do, but do it on a more regular basis. So there is a map in the plan, the town center area, that suggests different ways that the pedestrian system connecting to the surrounding woods, forests, et cetera, bike trails, et cetera, could provide an opportunity again for pedestrians and bicycles. As I mentioned before, gateways and wayfinding. We know where these things are, so we assume that other people know where they are too. And in fact, they can't. So how could we establish a gateway and wayfinding signage theme? We're not talking about going up and putting signs everywhere, right? That doesn't fit into the character of Norfolk. But if we had a little, our town seal or some logo or something that said, okay, parking this way, coffee this way, or we're at Infinity Hall. Simple little things that people would navigate to. Think about the times that you've been in other communities, other places. And the first question you have is, how do I get there? So phones people could walk around doing this, or we could open their eyes up to the opportunities in our community. So the number one thing here, the key element, is to figure out a theme so that we don't put up haphazard things which are not in keeping with the character of Norfolk, but establish what we think that could be. And then as opportunities come up, we can figure out ways and places to do it. One of the signs that's on the regional plan, the cover of the regional plan, is the sign up on the green. What would you call that, Matt? The sign of the directional sign that's.
Turnpike sign, traditionally.
Perfect. That's iconic for us. Is there some way that we could sort of take an element of that and make that part of our theme so that everything now starts to get consistent and people say, okay, yep, that's what I need, that's what I'm looking for, where do I get to go? So something again to think about, because it's important. When you're in other places, you seek this information, yet here in our own home, perhaps we don't. The next part of the plan is about maintaining ecological networks. We do have City Meadow, we have Woods Forest, Blackberry River, and other things around, invasive species and so on. So the plan recommends and suggests we continue to remain cognizant of this, because maintaining character was the number one thing that came up in the town plan overall. So maintaining and enhancing the natural environment is a key part of this element of the plan. We're getting closer to the end here. It's possible that addressing zoning in the village center shouldn't really be the last item in this chapter, but we wanted to kind of express the goals and vision up front. But we did talk about the zoning regulations for the village business area here in the center and suggested that there could be some tweaks that could be made in these regulations to help support the other efforts in the community. One was revisiting the village district regulations. Village district zoning is a special type of zoning district in Connecticut where Planning and Zoning Commission gets to have an aesthetic influence on a project. They can actually turn a project down because aesthetically it doesn't fit. So there are some requirements under state law for this type of power to be given to a Planning and Zoning Commission, one of which is that they have a village district consultant, and this is a person or architect, landscape architect or planner, who would review the plans and provide commentary to the commission that they could then use as part of their actions. But the regulation as we wrote it in the zoning regulations implies that a public hearing is required on this. And there are some simple things that have gone on in town that shouldn't have to go through the public hearing process. It's fairly simple and straightforward. So we suggested that the commission could and should revisit the village district designation and their provisions to try to make it as user-friendly as possible. So to try to maintain the character here without being draconian in our regulations. Number two is revisit the location of the zoning boundaries. We have some properties right now in town that the properties are split by the zoning districts, and that starts to complicate what people can actually do on their property. And what we thought would make sense, given the size of the properties in the town center, that we could put all the properties in one district, so there's one set of rules that apply to the entire set of property. And that's something the commission could look at. The third thing that we mentioned here is revisiting the parking regulations. As part of my background, I used to be a town planner. I worked for real estate development companies for 7 years or so. One of the things I learned as part of this is that when a development is evaluating what they can do, the parking regulations are the number one limitation on what they can do. And in most communities, the parking regulations require that the parking be on the site of the use. That doesn't work here in the town center. Our town center has been here for decades, centuries, without parking requirements on individual sites. We have common parking and it's shared. So the plan suggests that we look at these parking requirements to see if there's enough parking here in the town center that we can share. People park once and visit multiple sites. That's what we want. That's what makes a vibrant and active town center. And we shouldn't do it the way that other towns do it. It might be something unique for Norfolk overall. And the overall recommendations, there is a plan. The overview of strategies, the text describes what they are. There's numbers to suggest locations where those could happen. Those it's all available digitally as part of the plan, etc. And so certainly welcome people's review and comment. And that leads me now to the question for our discussion tonight. How do we keep Norfolk's town center relevant now and in the future? Any questions or comments?
If we wanted to get a copy of the plan, is one available? And forgive me if you said that at the beginning.
It is available on the town website. There are a couple of copies here in the room tonight, so if you wanted to see one tonight, we can certainly sort of share it with you.
And I have resource copies available, you can get in my office, I have some too.
Okay, great.
As somebody who participated in writing it, I encourage everybody to read it. But if you had told me years ago I was gonna be writing documents for a living, I never would have believed it. And some people will attest to that. But I think it is meant to be a visionary document about the future of the community. I think that's something I believe that everybody in the community should care about, because it's the place that we're gonna live and so on. Other questions, comments? Yes?
I have a question. In terms of what you said about public hearings, how do you decide what is necessary for a public hearing, what is not? Because I know in small towns, sometimes there can be the charge of things happening without transparency. So how do you sort of balance those two?
So that's a more technical question, but under Connecticut state law, there's different types of levels of applications. So it's almost like if we had different boxes on a wall, is the way that different things get treated. So for example, if somebody in the room said, well, I want to build a new house in town, you would buy a lot, you could have your plans designed, and you would go to town hall to get a building permit for that house. It's permitted use in the district, so you can do it in compliance with the regulation. You don't need to go see the commission, but your plans are gonna be checked to make sure they comply with the regs. You're not gonna get your permit unless the setbacks and coverage and everything else complies. So that's the most simple level right there. It's permitted, building permit, you're on your way. After that, the next level up is what's called the site plan approval in Connecticut. Site plan approval is something where you probably need to go see the commission. There's something about the use, the level of construction, parking, the way it interacts with other uses, et cetera, require commission review. And so that's what you would need to do. After that, the next level up is what's called a special permit or a special exception approval. This is a little bit more discretionary. So for example, the classic case that we often use when we're talking about this, church. And is there any church in town that's not in a residential zone? Right? They're all in residential zones. So you say to yourself, well, church is in a residential zone? And you say, sure. Most of the town is zoned residentially. And so if we're going to have places of worship for each of our faiths, we would allow this use in an appropriate location through a discretionary process. Demonstrate that the use works there, public hearing is involved, and you would receive approval for that. If for some reason you're not able to demonstrate that, then you're probably not going to get approval for that. And then the last or final level, actually there's two more levels. The last one is a zone change or a text change. If you want to change the zone on the map or the text of the regulations, public hearing, got to go see the commission, you got to explain to the community why this is a good change. And the last one, I guess, is the relief valve, it's the ZBA, variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So zoning permit and site plan do not require public hearings. After that, they essentially do require public hearings. So that's the guideline in the regulation. And the basic rule of thumb is, does it have a meaningful impact on the community? Does this fit in? Should we look at this more closely?
So could you go back one slide?
No, one more.
This slide.
Yep.
So address zoning in the village center, tweak zoning to support what we want. What does that mean?
I think that the regulations right now were set up at a time and place when the regulations were last rewritten, and I don't remember when that was, 2006, 2005?
Oh, before that.
Was it before that? So they've been around for, let's say, 6 or 8 years, if you will. When we established the village district zoning in town, we thought we were doing the right thing. Our experience now over the years has caused us to believe that the requirements for public hearings in as many situations as we have had might not be necessary. I think if I understand the history correctly, there was a situation, there was a building that with dormers were being added. There was really no other change to the building but dormers were being added. And it required a public hearing. So should it have is really the question. So those are the kinds of tweaks that in the process, we should look at and decide if it,
But what if it was dormers being added to a historic building?
well, okay, so a village district is not a historic district. It is meant to maintain and enhance the character of the community, and who gets to judge that? And that's why the statutes lay it out, that the commission has to use special provisions when they do this type of thing. So it's not a, if it's in the historic, well, we don't have a local, we do have a
Yes,
local?
you do.
We have two locals, correct?
One.
There's
Why
two
not?
nationals.
Contiguous buildings, but I think to your point, there are plenty of historic buildings in this town that are not protected by in the local historic district. So, yeah, it could be.
So one of the most difficult situations I had, years ago, I was a town planner in Avon, and in front of where Walmart is now, there was a bank that came in to be built. And the architects came up with this glass box building with reflective glass and everything else. And the commission was going crazy. I mean, Route 44 is not a place of beauty. I think we can all agree on that, correct?
Sounds better looking than Walmart.
Well, it was Caldors at the time, though. That was sweet. I got my first slot car. So, but the issue there was, how do we try to guide this building to have it sort of fit into the character of the community? And the issue is we ended up in a disagreement with the applicants, and the glass building went ahead. And the police chief even said, you cannot, it was a bank, Hartford National Bank at the time. I told you how long ago it was. You can't have reflective glass on a bank. If somebody's been robbing in the bank, I can't have my guys outside, they can't see what's going on. You can't. We had no tools, nothing. So village district is a powerful tool, but it needs to be used very carefully. And again, to try to preserve and enhance the special character of what we have already. So that's sort of the guidance for it overall. Yes?
Changing the subject a little bit, how much flexibility do we have with other entities? For example, the idea of crosswalks would be ideal, and I can imagine a perfect scenario, to me at least, of having a crosswalk right here that would go across into the Yale community. However, Route 44 is a state road, and there are all kinds of regulations about how close to corners you can have crosswalks and all that kind of stuff. So how difficult is it to deal with that, and are some of the options off the table because of those things?
So I think the plan is a powerful document because it can advocate for municipal goals and ideals. So we aspire in Norfolk to have more crosswalks. We're not telling the state exactly where or how, and they're going to use their controls to evaluate any request that comes along. So if we went to the state and said, no, it has to be here, they may say no. If on the other hand, we went to the state with, how can we get crosswalks in here to get across the street, they're more likely to help us in that regard. So I had occasion, again, Tom, 40 years sounds like a long time. But I've had occasion to work on 3 town plans and communities. And so ideas that were planted 20 years ago are coming to fruition today because the community is able to say it's been part of our vision for more than 20 years now. So the value of the plan is not that it says we're going to do this. That's the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and others. But what it's meant to do is be an advisory document that says we want to have more crosswalks and aspire to do that and work towards that. So it runs that delicate.
Yeah, I was gonna say you could add to that if you discuss how the state takes into consideration a town's POCD.
Yes,
Yeah.
the state pays attention to it. As they're planning projects and state grants and other things, the POCD falls into their decision-making matrix. Yes?
We actually have 4 crosswalks in town, and the state will work with you,
Yes.
because I called up and got one put in.
Great, thank
One
you.
at the fountain,
So can I take
over
this,
to the Patel Stecco estate.
can I take that off the list now? Is that-
Well, if you
Leave it on.
have 4, but the problem is, people don't stop.
I understand.
We have small signs off to the side, and I'll stand there. I walk the town frequently, but we do have 4, and like you said, the state it wasn't exactly where I wanted it, I probably called 15 years ago. But they put it in the vicinity of where I asked. I don't think it's in the best location, because it puts you at an embankment instead of a driveway. But they did put it in upon request.
And we are, thank you for that effort. We are going through a transition now too, in terms of motorists' perception of pedestrians and bicyclists and others. So for many years, drivers felt the road, the pavement was their territory from curb to curb, and don't anybody dare, get on my road. And now there's a growing awareness. People find themselves walking and biking more often. They're more sensitive to it. And so we're going through this transition now. So there are drivers who just suddenly realize that they've blown by you at 35 miles an hour, that you were trying to cross the street in a crosswalk. And sometimes they apologize or whatever, but this is going to be an ongoing thing. And I think the more that we can do, my wife makes fun of me because I will go to the curb and actually start to step out into the roadway to make my presence known. She thinks I'm going to walk in. I'm not walking in front of the car. I'm just letting you know that this is what's going on. I don't encourage any of you to do this, but it works for me. Yes?
I also think it would be valuable if there were a way to communicate with other towns in Connecticut that have had a successful time. Like, I grew up near New Milford, and they changed their entire town green. All the parking was reversed, and they put in speed bumps, and they took down the wiring in a certain section. And that happened in a relatively short time frame, and they must have had a lot of meetings to make that happen, but are they happy with it? How did they do it? What did they go through? And that might be a good resource for a town like Norfolk that wants to do that.
And we're actually kind of fortunate here. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. So in Connecticut, there are 8 regional planning agencies or councils of government, and these provide an opportunity for communities to get together to talk about common interests or situations, and they're a tremendous resource. And they're also kind of a clearinghouse in terms of if an issue comes up, suggest who you might talk to at DOT or where you might do at OPM or DEP or other places like that. So I think it's hard for a municipality all on its own to have all of the expertise, but the regional planning agencies, or the COGS as they're known, is an opportunity for us to continue to do that. So that's a great resource for us. Yes?
Hi, thank you. This has been a really interesting conversation so far, and I missed the first few minutes, so I apologize.
Oh, that was the best part.
And I understand that's a visionary document, but I was wondering if there was any part of the plan that talks about funding or ways to, put these things into fruition.
Not specifically in that regard. So the plan, we did talk off early on, that the plan is a visionary document, it's advisory. So the Planning and Zoning Commission cannot tell the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance where to spend money on. Those are the issues that they go through their own due diligence in terms of growth in the grand list, state aid, and other things like that to try to put together a plan that works. The plan in the implementation section, which is the last chapter, does talk about trying to coordinate the plan objectives with the municipal operating budget and the capital budget. Because if we can put money into crosswalks, one every 2 years for the next 5 years, that'd be 5 more crosswalks in town. But there's other priorities. So the plan is aspirational and says we should try to do these things because they'll make our community a better place. But the day-to-day mechanics of what actually happens as part of the budget